What's up? Today we're going to take a look at the behind the scenes of how we shot some of our latest projects. So let's jump right in. The main short film we're going to talk about today will be The Can, our latest post-apocalyptic short comedy film. So if you haven't watched it already, be sure to do that first by clicking up here. The first shooting day we're going to talk about is the 24th of August this year, 2024. And on this day we actually shot 3 different projects. Again, The Can, our main short film we're going to talk about today. Also a one-take horror short film that came out last week, which is called The Barn, and a music video which will probably only come out next year. So first up, for the pre-production, we knew it was gonna take place in this post-apocalyptic setting, so I had to get some worn out old clothes that we can destroy, rip apart, put on some fake blood, and just basically looks like it's used very much. So I went to a secondhand shop. Here I bought this backpack. It was already dirty, so perfect. I'm glad I didn't have to wear it. And I found this one in some other secondhand shop. So on the day of the shooting, when we first got on location, which was this nice barn location that my granddad organized, we first checked the location out a little bit, where we can shoot, what we can do in which place, because actually we didn't really know how the set will look on the day of shooting, because when I scouted it out a few weeks earlier, for example, this hall was completely empty and a big open space, and on the day of shooting, it was already full of hay. So we went around, checked everything out, and then it was time for Michael and Rabea to put on the costumes. I'm probably forgetting a lot of stuff because I just took a few notes, and while I'm editing this video and looking through the 5 hours of footage that we did for the short film, I'm probably finding a lot more gems that I didn't talk about, but I'll just do that with a voiceover.
One thing we didn't take into consideration: for Rabea to put the X on her waist, she needed a belt, which she didn't have. So I gave her my belt, but since it didn't fit, we poked a makeshift hole into it with a hammer and the red Sidewinder screwdriver. And by the way, the backpack was filled with random stuff like Amazon packaging from other props I ordered and some newspapers.
Great tip to easily add some production value is just put some dirt on the clothes. Then we did some quick fit checks for both of them. And started with the first scene. When the girl enters the barn, we had the idea to just make her jump down so that she lands on the hay and we're immediately in the scene in the barn, even though it didn't really make sense on location because of course we wanted to imply that she crawled through the window when in fact there was no way that she would really fit up there. Like, well, maybe in a real post-apocalyptic situation you would do that. So she just basically held herself up, was out of the frame and able to just jump down, and it looks like she jumped down from maybe the window. That's at least probably what you would think when you would watch the movie. Even though the behind the scenes just looked like this. She just held herself up, jumped down, and then the scene started. Filmmaking magic. And of course we tried that a few times. Now, how did we get these amazing light streaks? Of course, the lighting already was pretty good because the sun came through these windows, but to really emphasize the light, we used some haze. I actually made a full episode on this atmosphere aerosol back in the day, I think back in 2021 maybe. It's linked up here, you can watch it if you want to know more about how to get this nice atmosphere in a can.
Of course, we had to be extra careful in a barn full of hay, so no open fire. Of course, the same thing applies to things like our haze in a can. Oops.
Then we entered the next room where we again sprayed more haze and had this nice already squeaking door. Now the sound we recorded on set from the squeaking door sounded like this. But to really emphasize the squeaking of this old door, we added some sound effects in post, which made it sound like this. I actually made a full video on the importance of sound design with the main examples also coming from this film. So if you want to know more about sound design, be sure to watch that video by clicking up here. I should stop just plugging other videos. Give some insights here. Now then we went into the next room. We basically almost shot this entire sequence, at least up to this point, chronologically, in the right order that it happens in the film. This is the room where she finds the ravioli. And the funny thing, in this room, to really add to the kind of end of the world scenario, there were 2 calendars that we didn't place. They were there from someone that lived there or worked there before us. And the first one was from 2010, which is when the outbreak in The Walking Dead happened. And the other one was from 2020, which is from, of course, when our outbreak happened. Now then we did this hero shot of her blowing the dust off the can. For this, of course, we just put some dirt and dust and sand on the can for a dramatic effect.
Wie halt Leute Staub wegpusten im Film. Hast du schon mal einen Film gesehen?
Speaking of the can, to avoid any copyright issues and also to put in some little Easter eggs, this is the original can that we bought in the store. Very famous brand, I guess most of you know it. And I ripped it off and designed my own ravioli sticker in Photoshop. So I put some free stock photos on it, a few textures, these nutritional score things, and also this ingredients list where everything is basically set to 0. And as an Easter egg, there's my logo and my name.
Then I printed the logo, cut it out, and used some double-sided tape to stick it onto the cans. And of course I made several of these, even more than the 3 on screen here, for several tries because we're going to beat the cans and throw them in the water. But more on that later. And I also had the idea for a POV shot using the Joby Gorilla Pod, which didn't make it into the final movie though.
Next we shot this first little jump scare scene, for which I had to climb on the hay, which was really scary because of spiders and dirt. But I managed to do it. I was brave enough.
Also, after every take of this jump scare scene, Rabea's hair was full of hay, which we had to clean before the next take because of continuity, of course. Took us like 20 minutes each time. And while Michael and Rabea got something from the car, I picked up some random B-roll shots of the barn for the intro edit. This one and this one. And of course, I'm not demanding anything from my actors that I wouldn't do myself, so here's some throwing myself on the hay to give some directions.
Ravioli.
Now after this next fighting scene where she gets smacked in the face, we put some fake blood on Rabea's mouth to make it seem like, of course, she's bleeding. And this is where I spontaneously had the idea for a nice transition into the next scene. This wasn't planned, it was made up on the spot. Because I knew the next scene would take place at the water, so I had the idea that she's just spitting out the blood and we transition into the next scene by starting with a drip of blood in the water. I just had to remember that, so I didn't forget it. But that's how we came up with this transition. Then, still at the barn, we picked up this shot with a huge lighting difference of her coming from this completely bright outside field location inside the very dark, or at least compared to the outside, dark barn. But no problem, because we of course shot with the FX6, which has this nice seamless ND filter, which allowed us to make the image brighter by turning off the ND filter very seamlessly. Next up we did the X shot. Kids, don't try this at home. Even adults, don't try this at home. It's very dangerous. We used a real axe and we really just axed it into the backpack. The timing had to be right for Rabea not to get her head chopped into 2 pieces. But we managed to make it seem a little bit more close with some speed ramping in post. We basically did like 2 or 3 times, so after the first try, of course, the backpack was already smacked to pieces, but you don't notice it in the shot because of the framing. Put the camera on the floor, Rabea is moving to the side, and Michael is just smacking the shit out of the backpack with the axe. Quick little speed ramp and it makes it seem even more close, and that's the final result. Now then the ending shot, finally after everything they went through, the girl gets to finally eat the ravioli after putting it in the pot. I tried to nicely incorporate the text, the can and the end in the scene by making it disappear behind the ravioli and putting it onto the can. And speaking of this pot, I found it before training, also very spontaneous in the supermarket. Knew I had to take it for the film because this was a few weeks earlier. And of course also to make it seem worn, I had to stretch it out. I did that at home and also beat it a few more times on the floor at the day after shooting to make it seem even more worn out. Next we did the shot where she smacks him in the face with the can. And for this to make it seem like the can really impacted his head, I just beat it up with a hammer and put some fake blood on it for a comedic relief.
Unser POV?
And then we also shot these 2 scenes, one walking on a field where I would later add a helicopter. So I just said, look in this direction, she looked in this direction, and then with the help of some Photoshop generated fill AI, I tried to kind of build a world with a little bit of a somewhat set extension, or at least adding something to the world. I think it looks really good because of course the lighting matches, but there's just a little bit something off with it. Same goes for this shot right here. She's walking on the street and I added this broken down car to make it seem like it's really in a post-apocalyptic world, like in, for example, The Walking Dead. They have the budget to put a real car there, but it kind of also a little bit reminds me of the old days where they had some not that good VFX shots in the show, which kind of brings up some nostalgia for me. So you could say I did it on purpose. Now after the first hours of shooting all of this, we went to Burger King, ate some well-deserved food, and then we went back to the location at night to shoot our one-take horror short film, The Barn, which I can't go over that much of behind the scenes because of course it's just one take.
Hier kommen nicht rein. Verdammt.
But basically we did all of this as a one-taker, and I just gave the details by screaming where they have to be when I was at a certain place with the camera, because of course I'm rotating around the girl that's waking up in a barn, strapped to a chair, and each time that just the girl is in the frame, the bad guy moves, and of course when he's in the frame, he has to stand still again. So that means almost all of the sound was of course replaced, because you could hear me talking when I said do this, do that. And after that, again, we also shot a music video.
Ich hasse Motten.
But enough of the barn, let's talk about the water scenes. This shooting took place at the 2nd of September 2024 and we wanted to shoot at this water location for 2 years.
Gras ist höher geworden, aber nice.
Because this movie was planned for 2 years, not meaning that we really planned the story and everything out for 2 years. No, we just had the idea. We wanted to make a post-apocalyptic short film and also incorporate a water scene that we wanted to shoot at this location.
So, gut, gucken wir mal. Oh Gott, wie soll man denn da reinkommen? Das ist ja schon das erste Prop. Oh, hier sind überall Brennnesseln, Leute, passt auf. Also keine Ahnung. Oh Gott, oh Gott, ich bin so tief in irgendein Matschloch eingesunken. Yikes, Alter. Ich schwöre, mein Fuß war weg. Der war kurz in China rausgedippt. Okay, hier wird es ein bisschen tiefer.
But we didn't really get around to really doing it. I mean, of course, we released several short films during that time, but we just couldn't do this one because every time we wanted to shoot or had the idea, it was already winter and way too cold to shoot in this water. So on the day of the shoot, as always, first we really checked out the location, got in the water, looked around, also went up the river a little bit to really map out where we want to shoot which scene.
Das ist vor allem ganz schön kalt. Oha, hier ist voll geil, hier ist ja ultra idyllisch.
Ja, okay, jetzt geht's ein bisschen rein. Aber oh, ich gehe da ja unter. Wo bist du?
Boah, hier voll gefährliche Gewässer, Alter.
Oh, hier ist noch was Wasser.
Digga, wie krass sieht das denn hier aus? Das sieht ja ultra crazy aus. Oh, Alter, richtig der riesige Fisch.
And for the really intense fighting scenes, of course, I used the A7S III in the underwater housing so nothing could happen. But for the above water scenes, I wanted to go all out and use the FX6. So that meant not only putting my 5-figure camera just slightly above the water, but also if I would trip or fall or slide and fall into the water, then I would just pray that I could hold up the camera and not drown it. Anyways, of course, first we picked up all the shots where they were still dry. And then of course for the fight scene, picking up all the shots where they were wet. But that also meant we only had one try to film the shot where they jump in the water and get wet for the first time. Otherwise they would have to dry up first, which would take ages, and it just wouldn't be very practical for the shoot. So for this shot we set up all the cameras, the FX6 outside of the water on a tripod, the A7S III in the underwater housing tucked to the side so you don't see it in the other shot, a GoPro right behind here, and I also shot with a small camcorder just as a backup to get more angles. Now this actually is a really nice place. It's just a few, several hundred, maybe 100 meters away from a street, a small highway, but there are not that many cars on it. So we didn't have that much of a problem with sound. Sometimes when a big truck or a loud motorbike drove by, of course we had to stop and wait for the shoot because of the sound. But besides that, it was really quiet and not that cold even for the time of the year. And just overall a really nice spot to hang out even if you're not shooting. I would just take a bath there and chill in summer. I mean, it's not the nicest, cleanest water. It's a river with some dirt on the bottom, but you have to trees above you. After a few minutes the water is really enjoyable and it's just overall a very nice location. However, after the shoot I had a small leech on my foot.
Oh Gott, helft mir! Ah! Ja, Digga, da war ein Blut. Ah, der ist an meiner Hand!
So maybe just chill in the Drowning Shadows pool.
Also, there were fish eating my feet while shooting that scene. Some people pay for that. I got it for free.
Now that's it from the behind the scenes look. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and also consider subscribing right here for more filmmaking videos and insights just like this one. You can find the final short film right here and the horror film right here. And I will hopefully see you in the next one. Goodbye.